Hello, Internet. Mike Byrne here from MMOBomb.com, checking in with you with another MMO Thoughts episode today. And today I'm going to kind of summarize all the newish details we got from the Tokyo Game Show regarding Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, scheduled for release globally later in 2021. No new dates were given, and I think I should preface this whole thing right off the top, actually. There weren't a whole lot of new groundbreaking details. There was some new gameplay footage. We are going to get into some of the things that they covered that are new or interesting to PSO2 fans in regards to how PSO2 functions in a couple different areas. But there was no release date. There was no huge, new mega trailer. We saw new gameplay footage, but no new mega trailers or anything like that. No big feature lists. This was a nice presentation, in my opinion, as a PSO2 fan, as a longtime PSO fan. Remember, it's celebrating its 20th anniversary this December. So it's been around for a while. I'm a big fan. I've never been shy about voicing that. But I viewed the whole presentation as a nice presentation for PSO2 players. Not necessarily something that's going to, if you never played PSO or PSO2 and you saw the presentation, you're like, oh, I have to play that game. So it was kind of a mixed bag in my estimation. Lots of new little nuggets of information, nothing really huge and groundbreaking and earth-shattering if you're not already following it. So I'm going to condense what was about a 45 minute to 1 hour presentation here into a few minutes. Kind of give you the highlights. I may not cover all these small minutiae, so I'll link the entire presentation down below if you want to watch it. Now, getting started, just let me say that the three panelists for this, I don't speak a lick of Japanese, but watching the three panelists that did this presentation was a lot of fun. I was watching with the English translation, so there was, a translator speaking over them, but they just seemed like they were having a blast, even if their reactions sometimes were a little big for things that weren't all that big a deal, but they looked like they were having a blast. It was seemed funny. They were all having a good time. It was just an enjoying presentation to watch on that front. Now, getting into the actual game itself, we saw the initial trailer, at least the character creation portion of it shown again. Now, that only showed human, Dooman, and cast races, but they did say that Dooman would be in the game as well. Fast forwarding later, when they talk about individual classes, we only saw in all of the footage 3 classes: Hunter, Ranger, and Force. Now, they didn't go into specifics about what classes would be available at launch and what ones would come after, but those were the 3 that we saw some hands-on and some gameplay and some combat with throughout all of the gameplay footage that they showed in the entire presentation. After that, they kicked it off with discussion about the open world, and that is the huge difference between PSO, PSO2, and now PSO2 New Genesis. Currently in PSO2, everything's very instance-based and corridor-like. You find your way through a map, you get to the end, and it ports you back. That map is generated each time you jump in, and there's a set number of people here. The big thing about New Genesis, of course, is that it's an entirely open world. And while we've only seen a forest kind of biome, we haven't seen like a tundra or a volcanic caves or a ruins or a dragon altar or anything like that. They did mention that over time, more zones would be added. So what will be there at launch? I don't know. We've only seen the forest so far. But at least they did allude to more zones being added over time. And they also said that eventually it would get to the point where if you can see it, you can go there. And they queued this off immediately with a transition from you boot into the game, you're in a lobby, which is it was a city, basically, and you were immediately able to walk out into the open world. Now, this is a departure from previous versions of the game, but it's not full-scale MMO, if that's what you're thinking. When you go into the open world field, it's going to kind of auto matchmake you with a total of 8 people, so you and 7 others. You won't be immediately partied or anything like that, but you're not going to go into the open field and see 50 different characters farming the monsters you're trying to get for a particular quest or to level up or anything. It's going to limit those to 8 players. Later, as part of this matchmaking topic, they did have a party come together. you came across 3 friends in the field and they joined into a party and went and did some quests. So you will be able to do that, but it's going to be limited with how many people are in each instance. Now, to traverse this big, wide open world, we got some new movement mechanics. They were teased in the original trailer, but they were explained in a little more detail here as far as sprinting and gliding to get across this big map in a much faster fashion. And it was showed off nicely. It looks good, but it's one of those things, again, like they were reacting to it, and I was too. Like, as a PSO2 fan, I got a shit-eating grin on my face. I'm cheesing it up watching this. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And then there was this part of me that had to go, dude, you're watching Sprint and Glide. Settle down. But as a PSO2 fan, that is so different from what has been in PSO2 or the original PSO that it is really nice to see and does bring a smile to my face. While I'm talking about the open world portion, though, and I'm not going to be able to show every single clip here that they showed, so if you want to see the gameplay footage, again, I'll put the link to the entire presentation below. But to give you some higher level information that they did drop, even if it was sporadically dropped throughout the presentation, you'll find healing items in the field. And while that's not different from PSO2, you can find a dimate, trimate, whatever in the field. You will not be able to buy them, apparently, from shops. So that's an interesting little change on the healing items. They've also been condensed to one healing item. So there's only one. And even better, you're now able to use it while moving. So while running or in combat, you'll still retain movement of your character when using that healing item. Finding a particular Resta-type item in the world is what will allow you to actually have more and more, carry more and more healing items. So a little nice tidbit on that front. Now, the next big reveal were a few details that were class-specific. They didn't get granular with the classes, but again, they did drop some information. So on the Hunter class, you have obviously your sword wielding, and kind of the nifty pieces of information that were added there were that your combo as a Hunter with your sword is now a 5 trigger combo instead of a 4, with that 5th being kind of an almost a Photon Arts level attack. So one more combo. If you watch the gameplay footage, you'll also notice that perfect attack is not there. The ring that consolidates over your character to get that perfect attack, it's not there anymore. So they said this is going to make it more, free. You can do your attacks as you want to, as long as you're doing them within a particular time frame to keep the combo going. They also showed a shield-based ability to protect yourself from an incoming attack. And if you fire right back at the right timing to get a counterattack off of a shield, it will trigger that 5th level Photon Arts-like attack as a counterattack. In other videos for the other 2 classes, they did mention, by the way, that the shielding is not weapon-specific. So all the classes will have basically a block ability. When we got to the Ranger, we saw a little bit of play about distance. So in the current game, the Ranger obviously wants to play at range, but the range you are at tends to do very little in the way the damage numbers tick. It does a little bit, but not a lot. In this, positioning was much more important than it is in PSO2 as far as your range from the enemy. There's a sweet spot. Too far away, you're not doing a lot of damage. Too close in, you're not necessarily doing the best amount of damage, but that sweet spot. And they showed a little slide back and forth or side to side that could be utilized for the Ranger to get them into a better range to execute the attack. Also, they had the same type of dodge and counter attack abilities as well. When we got to Force, we saw a little more element-based talk. In this case, fire and ice were used as examples to increase damage. And again, range played in here a little bit, but not so much. There was no noticeable difference in numbers, but they did show off in both of these examples the kind of over-the-shoulder free aim camera, so we know that's still in the game as well. The Force was also able to use the elements of their attack to trigger various states. So in PSO2, there are elemental weaknesses, and you do more damage if something is weak to the element that you're attacking with. Fine. Here you were actually able to trigger specific to the elements themselves, this elemental state. So you might, if you attack something that's weak against ice and you attack it in certain points or certain weak points with those ice attacks, you could actually freeze down the entire boss and have a few seconds of just free damage for you and your party. So there was some interesting elements as far as like a stagger mechanic almost, if you were combining your party right and using the right elemental attacks, the right elemental spells at the right time on the right weak point of the target. Continuing with combat, weak points were still a thing in this, so they were, pretty much just big yellow circles, so easy to see, but the elemental attacks and stuff could reveal additional weak points, so that was a nice little note that they had there as well. Now, in looking at the way you would utilize the combat in the open world together, we did see footage of a full party of 4 running around, performing a quest, going to different quest objectives, and taking out mobs that were in those quest objective areas. And in between, we did see trials. That's what they call them on the map, but when you get there, they're emergency trials. So your emergency quests look like they're still intact here as well. Fighting various monsters of various difficulties, groups of monsters that have various attacks. Maybe they're sniping you, maybe they're using magic, maybe it's like a Banzer and they're very quick, all that kind of stuff. All that looked great, and that's overall the game looked good. Now the quality of the video at times was a little not great, but they were streaming it live and all that stuff, so I'll give them a little pass on that one. And I apologize if I actually used any of that in the final edit of this, where it got maybe a little choppy. It's their stream that got a little choppy at the point. But for the most part, the presentation was done really solidly. So from top to bottom, it looked interesting. It's a lot of stuff that PSO2 fans have probably wanted in some way, shape, or form throughout the 8 years that the game has been out, or the less than 1 year it's been out here in North America. You've got more movement. You've got an open world. That's a big one. In that open world, there is a full day-night cycle. There is a weather cycle. They said that those will factor into things that spawn or the way you fight things as well. So we've got, for the first time in a PSO game, a real seemingly living, breathing world. We've got gathering, we've got cooking. They mentioned all of those. There's monsters that are very, very weak, that you can just go and kill them to gather. They were called tames. They don't really fight you back, but if you don't sneak up on them, they might run away. So we're starting to see some very, very open world stuff in the game, and I think that's a great thing. I've wanted PSO to go in that direction for a while, as I'm sure many of you had. Now, I do have concerns about it as well. Does it oversimplify combat now that everybody has a dodge, everybody has a shift, off to the side, where they can then counterattack off of that? So you've got the dodge going out to the side, you've got a full-blown shield, both can trigger a counterattack in the other direction. Those things start to make the classes kind of feel the same because you have the same skill sets. So that's really going to be important, that the weapon or the techs that people are using, that's going to give the classes their identity. So I hope that those feel vastly different. It did look more impactful, I will give it that, in combat. The hunter swinging the sword did look like there was a more direct, impactful feeling of sword strikes against monsters. So all in all, it was a good presentation, lots of little pieces of information, but again, I've got to say, I think the presentation was geared more towards people that are already interested in PSO2 or in this, PSO2 New Genesis, one or the other. I don't think this was really, this was Tokyo Game Show. I think this should have been used as more of a, I don't know, maybe it's just me, more of a marketing, like, hey, let's get this to a bigger audience. But as a PSO2 fan, I liked what I saw. Does it really do anything that other games haven't? Not from what we saw today. There's a day-night cycle. There's a weather cycle. You can dodge. You can block. The combat is action-based. You can do gathering. You can do cooking. It's an open world. You can party with people. Yes, the open world does make it a little smaller in that there's only, 8 people in there, but I also think that that's kind of a good thing for the way the game operates. You can glide, you can sprint, right? You can do this in so many other games. So overall, I give the presentation a thumbs up as a PSO2 fan. I might have been disappointed if I was just vaguely interested in New Genesis because I heard the game was going open world and I didn't like the instant stuff. This presentation probably didn't do much for those types of fans or to gather new players. We're still going to have to wait on additional information on what classes will be available on launch, what ones will be coming after that, what zones and biomes will be open at launch, and what ones will be coming after that. There's still so much information. Hell, a launch date? There's still so much information we just don't know about the game yet. Besides the fact that it's going to be built in the PSO2 client, it'll have a graphical upgrade, you'll have a character in PSO2, and you can use that same character in PSO2 New Genesis, but the leveling will be different on both of those. Mags are really just cosmetic in PSO2 New Genesis. Some weapons might not convert because they're not in the game in New Genesis yet. So those details are all still outstanding. We don't have full lists or anything like that. But overall, definitely worth a watch if you're a PSO2 fan. I'd say check it out below so that you can see all the details. I've given you kind of the highlights of it, but not every single granular detail. And it's, it's a good watch. It's a good watch if you're a PSO2 fan, I think. But what did you think about Sega's presentation for PSO2 New Genesis? I will tell you, one of my favorite parts was looking at the background. I know that seems dumb, but the panelists were in front of some really cool, like, old Sega box displays. Like, there was a Dreamcast there and stuff, but all kinds of older stuff there. The wall that was behind them, if you get a close look at it, it's like Sega Saturn CD covers, haphazardly put on the wall and a plexiglass put on top of it. So it was neat seeing. You could catch in behind the middle panelist, you could catch that there was a Phantasy Star Sega Saturn label there. So it was a neat set. It was fun looking at that type of stuff. I like the presentation, but let me know what you think. Does this get you more excited for Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis? Or is this just, hey, cool, it looks like they're upgrading a lot of stuff to be a little more modern because PSO2 is an 8-year-old game, but there's still not enough details for me to know, is this something I'm going to like or not? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, gang, I'm Mike Burns saying stay safe, and we'll see you on the servers.